From Los Angeles, Rethinking Heroes with Carrie Harrison.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
Wow, I mean, first of all, what a question.
Journalism is about telling the truth.
All while ferreting out the bottom line.
I'm a Harrison Hellraiser.
With me, Carrie Harrison, as your guide.
Rethinking Heroes with Carrie Harrison.
And it is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com, where we are live streaming on all video and social media platforms. You can simply Google Carrie Harrison. That's C-A-R-Y, Carrie Harrison, YouTube, Carrie Harrison, YouTube. Boom, up comes the YouTube channel. You can see our guests. You can see the callers today as we open the phones shortly. I just got back from the Grand Canyon, which is why you did not hear me last week. I was 2 miles straight down under the rim. Now, you've seen pictures of the Grand Canyon. We all love Ansel Adams, et cetera, et cetera. But I was way down on the bottom where the rock is 2 billion, with a B, years old. And I know the Bible says we're only 6,000 or 7,000 years old, but apparently the Grand Canyon thinks otherwise. 8 days, no electricity, no cell phones, real camping on the banks, everything. Tarantulas, rattlesnakes, bee killers. Have you ever seen the cow killers? There are these giant hornets that are almost 2 inches long. I screamed like a 12-year-old girl and ran with my hands flapping. You would too. Trust me if you saw this bad boy. But it's nature in its rawest. All that to say, happy to be here with you in Las Vegas today, because this is the area I have to return to in order to fly back to continue to fly west back to LA. So with all that said, we were all submerged in clips of the recent Democratic National Convention. Coming up in a few ticks, we're going to open up the phones for your unbridled feedback and analysis, your hopes, your fears, your sober analysis of things to come. And that's coming up in about 20 minutes here on Rethinking Heroes. You can catch this broadcast live streaming, as I said, as video on YouTube. Simply Google Carrie Harrison YouTube. You'll start to remember where that is in the future. It's also going to help when you're leaving your car, because then you can continue listening and watching on your cell phone. You could also go to rethinkingheroes.com, rethinkingheroes.com, and catch our live feed there. Well, let's bounce over to beyond the usual MAGA mayhem. In a moment, we're going to explore the Christian Zionists. Now, it sounds kind of interesting. It seems somewhat familiar, right? A tribe of zealots who have taken it upon themselves to champion the cause of Israel with all the fervor of a revival meeting. Now, this is not a kumbaya that you want to have an ending for. What a spectacle. 10 million strong membership. I want you to think about that. That's like as big as Los Angeles itself, if not bigger in many ways. They outnumber the American Jewish population itself. These are not Jewish guys. These are not Jewish women. This is a Zionist movement that outnumbers the actual American Jewish population itself. And yet, they claim to be the true friends of the Jews. They claim to be the actual chosen ones. And what a curious brand of friendship this is supposed to be. Well, let's be clear. We're not talking about old-fashioned Republican Christians like George Bush Sr., Episcopalians that actually did believe in giving your fellow man a hand, not perfectly, of course, but a more reasonable, even occasionally flexible government. This MAGA level rejiggering of the late Jesus Christ, who never gave permission, by the way, to use his likeness or brand to clobber anybody. These so-called Christians tout their love for Israel as a divine mandate. Of course, we'll never see where that divine mandate came from, but they claim it is true, and therefore it is. Isn't that a beautiful syllogism? You could never prove it in school, but you can sure prove it in the public opinion with 10 million people. They say it's rooted in the Bible. There it is. Poof, done. Which Bible is that? Probably not the one you read in church, especially if you're Catholic. Anyway, they say it's rooted in the Bible and Christianity itself. It's rooted in Christianity itself. It's like, saying you're a Honda because you drive one. Well, there's probably not much of a connection. And maybe the Honda Corporation sees no connection. But these Christian Zionists who say they're following a divine mandate rooted in the Bible and in Christianity, we're going to scratch beneath the surface, and you're going to find a more sinister motive to hasten the apocalypse. The Jewish people, you see, are mere pawns in this grand design. They're instrumentalized to bring about the end of times. That would be the end of everything as you know it. Another form of instant genocide, if you think about it. In fact, don't think about it. Just listen for a second. Not only genocide, because when everyone gets raptured up, and at that moment of rapture, all the Jews are immediately converted into Christians. So you're not only wiping them all out physically and bodily, but wiping out their very essence and permanent history. That's a beautiful kind of genocide. But they're not talking about it that way. They're just helping all these Jews out, like atone, the ultimate atonement. And now, this is not, do I see anyone as chosen, not chosen? I'm telling you what's happening right now in the background as you sit there going, hooray, hurrah. And I'm excited for the hope that we're finally seeing a friggin' spine growing in the back of the Democrats, even a sense of humor. Oh my God, I've been waiting over 20 years. But we cannot take our eye off the ball on what's going on in the background, not with them, but beyond MAGA. And what of these Zionist Christian zealots, you wonder? A veritable laundry list of reactionary delights, suppressing political speech, lobbying for war with Iran, and unfettered military aid to Israel, all while wrapping themselves in the flag of democracy. Happily, there are those who dare to resist the Christian Zionist juggernaut, like the Political Research Associates, for one, has been monitoring their activities with the zeal of a hawk, exposing their networks and policy agendas for everyone to see. And then there's the grassroots movement, Christians for a Free Palestine, which dares to challenge the status quo with a message of peace and ceasefire in Gaza. Did I say a message of peace and ceasefire in Gaza? What an odd thing to say. Not for me, but just period. You're not going to see that generally debated for more than 1 minute on CNN yet, though things may change. It's a theater of absurd we're living in, where zealotry masquerades as piety. A wonder anyone can keep a straight face, except maybe in the Deep South. Yet the threat to democracy, our democracy, is so real, as we all know. So we're going to shine a light on these Christian Zionists so that you can see what's actually behind the curtain of Project 2025, of Donald Trump, of that side. Plus, we're going to open up the phones and we're going to talk about the Democratic convention, what you want, what you see, and what you hope for. Because all of this stuff is important and it's all happening real time. And this is it, folks. I've never said the word folks, but this is it, folks. This is it. This election, it all ends as you have known it, or it continues and we can get it modified. In the wake of the recent Democratic convention, we're going to pivot to a champion of the resistance against corporate power and its stranglehold on our politics. Roots Action is a bold initiative that's galvanizing people across the country to demand real change, from economic fairness to environmental protection, from vinyl protection too, from ending endless wars to ensuring health care for all. They're mobilizing behind policies that put people over profits. With us on Rethinking Heroes is Sam Rosenthal. He's a political director of rootsaction.org, an organizer and a researcher based in Washington, D.C., who previously served as the political director at Our Revolution. And Sam Rosenthal, I want to welcome you to Rethinking Heroes.
Hi, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
And thank you for sitting through my very, very lofty and long introduction, but that's what happens 8 days with no cell phone. You make up for it in crazy ways. But here we are in this real world today. And Sam Rosenthal, we're looking at a nation that calls itself democratic, but its government is beholden still to corporate interests. And I don't care if you say Democrat or Republican. And this is something you guys fully well recognize.
Yeah, that's right. One of the core values that we've been trying to push at least the Democratic Party towards is to reject dark money in Democratic Party politics, particularly around primaries. You saw this year we had a number of primary contests where we had more progressive members of the House, members of the squad, as they're called, unseated by dark money, where we had millions and millions of dollars pouring into these districts that to that point had really not seen multi-million-dollar primary elections. These are safe blue districts, by the way, so you get a Democrat in any case. And these are groups that were really, focused on getting a more robust group of Israel right or wrong folks into the House, getting those who are critical of Israel, especially of Israel's war in Gaza, out of the House. But then they ran ads and commercials that had nothing to do with Israel and had everything to do with these issues that they weren't really concerned about. So when you talk about corporate power, I think that's one of the ways it's really shown up this year. Is just all the dark money we've seen flow into primaries on the Democratic Party side. And, the Republicans, we don't have to talk about. We know that they're completely beholden to corporate power. But at least at Roots Action, we think that this is a worthy cause to push with Democrats, with Democratic voters. We think people care about this issue a lot.
Sam Rosenthal, what's the point of having a Democratic Party if it merely serves as let's say, a junior partner to the Republicans in perpetuating the status quo?
Yeah, I think lots of folks feel discouraged with the two-party system in general. They feel like, what's the point in voting between these two parties, especially if, you care about issues like military policy, endless wars abroad. It seems like the two parties are very indistinguishable at times on that front. And if you look at the last 20 years of American history, you've had Democrats and Republicans alike kind of continue to wage war abroad, whether those are secret wars, wars that we don't really talk about in the mainstream press here, wars that more folks know about, in Iraq and in Afghanistan. It doesn't seem to matter too much which party is in the White House. We have a policy of kind of keeping the war machine churning. Um, I think when you say what's the point of having a Democratic Party, I don't know. This is the hand we were dealt. We've got the Democrats and we've got the Republicans. So far, there hasn't been much of a third party effort that has really galvanized folks and built up enough of a political head of steam that it can challenge these two parties. So that's why we're still sort of at Roots Action on the very critical side of the Democratic Party, with the hope that we might see more progressive policy in that party.
It's interesting, Sam Rosenthal. We like to call ourselves a free people. Only 21% of Americans even have a passport. So they have nothing to compare what an unfree people looks like unless it's been on TV somewhere. But even that, they just don't know. 21% of us have passports. 21% of us have traveled. They're not the ones out there making wild claims. They've actually seen the other people of Earth. The other ones just know what they've been told over and over again, brainwashing, if you will. So here we are as a collective, 370, 80 million of us saying we're a free people when our choices are limited to two parties. It's like having two kinds of toilet paper and saying you got plenty of ass wipe. Well, you may have lots of squares per roll, but if A and B are pretty similar, like it's chocolate vanilla, but it's mixed, so it's actually chocolate vanilla, it's not really a big chasm between real things changing, both of which are funded by the same corporate masters. So it's a complicated question. If it even is a question, it's just more of a statement. It's just two heads of the same snake at the moment, it feels like.
Yeah, I think it does feel like that often. I think I would say that, at Roots Action, we're organizers and we're concerned with how can we move power and what can we do to move those who are powerful. And when we look at our options, I agree that often the kind of the manifestation of policies that the Democrats or the Republicans are championing are not really that different. You sort of, working people are in similar straits and similar circumstances. Endless war continues abroad, etc. But I think that there's a difference between looking at the Republican Party, who really doesn't care at all what progressive grassroots activists say. Maybe they care about what grassroots Christian nationalist activists say, but they don't care what we say. The Democratic Party doesn't particularly care what we say, but every once in a while, I think that you're able to get a toehold with the Democratic Party, and you're able to nudge things along somewhat. You're able to sort of warp the orthodoxy of the Democratic Party. That doesn't mean you get the policy you want. Rarely you do. And I think that's because, exactly as you're saying, these are still both parties that are beholden to capital. They're corporatist parties. They know where their donors are. They know what their donors want to see. But if the question is who is movable, if at all, and it's a big question, how movable are these people? The Republicans are not movable whatsoever from the left. The Democrats are maybe marginally movable from the left. So it's dire circumstances, but that's where we are.
Carrie Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Sign up for a free newsletter. And of course, you can get a transcript of this and every other program. You'll get archives going all the way back to day one. YouTube holds video archives of this and every other program. We're also live streaming right now on YouTube. You can go to Carrie Harrison YouTube. Just Google it or DuckDuckGo it. But it's Carrie with a C-C-A-R-Y, Harrison YouTube. You can also go to our KPFK Facebook page, where we are also live streaming, and you're going to see our guest, a champion of the resistance against corporate power and its stranglehold on politics, Sam Rosenthal, political director of rootsaction.org. He's an organizer, a researcher based in Washington, D.C., who previously served as the political director at Our Revolution. And we're taking a look at this notion of voting, and many, many, many young people feel it's a waste of time to vote because nobody cares. It doesn't go anywhere. The popular vote may say one thing, but then you've got the Electoral College that says another thing. So it's just sort of jury rigged all the way through. Do you think, Sam Rosenthal, that if young people were to show up for the first time in such significant droves, that it could overwhelm all the gerrymandering? All the things that we know about Louis DeJoy, the former head of the Postal Service under Donald Trump, who physically plucked, not himself, but had physically plucked over 10,000 mailboxes out of the soil in neighborhoods whose zip codes tend to contain a lot of people of color and such, so that those people who likely voted Democratic would not be able to mail it in. They'd have to physically go and vote on a Tuesday, a work day, where if you just blow off your job on a Tuesday, a work day, you could be called that you had abandoned your job and quit and never get rehired. So the stakes are so high when it comes to voting day. This is why we have workarounds, and there's a lot of interests that say, that undermine that completely. Young people are aware. They've never lived without an internet. They've never not been able to look up anything they want, whether it's true or not. Do you think there's a sufficient number that could get excited and vote so that at least we don't end up with Project 2025?
Yeah, I think that there are a number of, young people who are ready to turn out and vote. We have kind of seen over the last 8 years a surge in youth interest in the political process. I don't know how much that's translated to voting, but you have things like the Bernie Sanders phenomenon in 2016 and 2020 that brought out droves of young people, and also other groups of folks who historically have not voted in as high numbers as we'd like to see. But the problems you point to are very real. We have gerrymandering. We have a system that's sort of designed to make folks feel like their votes don't really count. Most of us live in either red or blue states. There are only a fraction of Americans who live in purple states, swing states, who can, sort of nudge an election. I live in Washington, D.C. I used to live in New York. It's never really mattered how I've voted because those are very discreetly blue states or, districts. And it's sort of foreordained where our votes are going to go. At the same time, you have all these really oppressive voter identification laws, things like this mostly happening in Republican-dominated states where people have to present photo ID. People have to fill out these long forms to get their voter registration correct. And these are just plainly designed to disenfranchise folks. And as you say, these are engineered to fall for the burden to fall more squarely on working people, on people of color, on young people, to keep people out of the political process. So at Roots Action, we have for a long time said that we should just have a national popular vote, the Electoral College is really designed to keep minority power intact. I mean, political minority power intact in this country. It's long since time that we got rid of that. And we see that the general electorate is much more progressive than who we have in Congress. And one of the main reasons why that is because we have gerrymandering at the state level, at the national level. We have political parties who are engineering districts so that they get exactly the balance of power they want to see in Congress, in their state legislatures, wherever it is. And we really need voter reform and voting reform laws to ameliorate this, because this is what makes people feel disenchanted with the political process.
In just a couple of minutes, we're going to open up the phones and let everybody chime in on what you're seeing out there, what you see as solutions, as workarounds, what are things that maybe we're missing that we need to know about. Also, your hopes and aspirations for a possible future that you didn't think was even possible 2 months ago. So things have extraordinarily changed. We're talking to Sam Rosenthal. He is with rootsaction.org. He's a champion of the resistance against corporate power and its stranglehold in our politics. He's political director of rootsaction.org. And Sam, media is everything. It is not the old days of Walter Cronkite putting on thick glasses and helping us understand what a moon landing looks like. It is all the messaging you ever need to know. It is the only truth many people ever get to know. And when I say truth, I say that with a lowercase t. Let's just call it, it's moving stuff with content. But if there is no countervailing content, if there is no fact checking, if there is no one to bust them for putting it out there, it becomes the unfortunate truth, another word for propaganda. Let's talk for just a quick second about the purpose of a media that seems to fail to hold those in power accountable for their actions. We know why, for one. We know that if you ask a senator a difficult question, he will no longer become available at the network level, which means your car sales are going to go down when General Motors is sponsoring the news, or watch any of the morning shows, Meet the Press, Face the Nation, Lockheed Martin, every one of them. So we know who is actually watching and what the message is for. All that to say, what is the purpose of a media, Sam Rosenthal, that fails to hold those in power accountable for their actions?
Yeah, it's a really sad state of affairs, unfortunately. And, media increasingly being indexed as a sort of product that's sold to people is a really bad turn for our country. And I think we've seen the effects of that. The same media that decries polarization now is the media establishment that sort of first figured out that there are these different political tranches of content that people want, and you can just sell that to them. You don't necessarily need to sell journalism or reporting or these things that we used to associate with the media. And then again, as you say, I mean, it's a corporate enterprise. The primacy for journalists working within mainstream media is on access, so they can't write things that are too critical of the president, senators, congresspeople, because they'll lose their access and someone else will be there to take that access. And then at the same time, advertisers want to see a certain type of content. They don't want to see something that's too critical of a program they're involved in. For example, Lockheed Martin, as you say, would not like to see a long discussion of weapon shipments that would make them look bad. So journalists who are working within the mainstream apparatus, and a lot of these people are good journalists. I know some of them personally. I have a lot of sympathy for them, but they're penned in on numerous sides. Their editors are penned in on numerous sides, and their publishers are. And it's very hard to just provide journalism as a public good, which is really what we need in this country. But it's been a long time since journalism was seen in that way.
And isn't it interesting how you framed that? It was really quite perfect, because what happens is one self-censors. You don't need someone to spike your story anymore. You don't need a boss to tell you can't do that story. You just know in your gut, these stories I can't do. Like when I was in Chicago at CBS, this is, 15 years ago, probably, they were grooming me. This is shocking to everyone, to be the next Paul Harvey. They just hadn't seemed to study my politics for some reason. So I'm in Chicago at WMAQ, and I was doing stories on why Chicago had the most amount of goiters per capita in the United States. Now, who the hell has a goiter? But this is when your throat swells up because of your thyroid. And it turns out after World War II, the Manhattan Project, they were dumping plutonium, heavy water, right off the Chicago what's called Navy Pier right into the drinking water. 200 yards off the end of Navy Pier are the water intake ducts for the entire city. And Chicago is having this horrible problem. So I was constantly doing stories on that because people need to know what's in their water. That is the job of the media, by the way, to reach out, to find out what regular people cannot find on their own and let them know. How long did that last for me? Exactly. Longer than me saying, or less time than me saying that story. And then you learn to just shut up and do Hollywood news. And then we blame the public for being idiotized for lack of content and lack of knowledge. Not their fault. People eat what's put on their plate, and a lot of us have to show up even harder, take greater risks, and do what we're doing right now at our own peril, including Sam Rosenthal, who does rootsaction.org at his own peril. Because, Sam, I would ask you in this ending question, you're not necessarily getting love letters from the other side, are you?
No, we don't get love letters from the other side, and not many love letters from Democrats in the establishment either. And it's hard because we think that we have a lot of good ideas for the way that the country should be moving forward, the party should be moving forward. Roots Action, for example, was the first national group to call for Joe Biden not to run for re-election. We're on the record in late 2022 saying that he shouldn't run for re-election. At the time, we were treated as pariahs. We were mocked by mainstream media when we got to talk to them. And now look where we are. I mean, the polling has turned around. The Democratic Party seems excited about the candidate they have at the top of the ticket. Now, Kamala Harris wasn't our first choice. We're not particularly excited about her politics, but we are excited that it looks like the Democrats might beat Donald Trump now, whereas with Biden at the top of the ticket, they looked certain to lose. And you really saw it at the DNC this week. It was a completely different tone and tenor to that convention than it would have been with Biden at the top of the ticket. So, sometimes the outsiders have some good ideas about how the party should be moving forward. Progressive policy is very popular with most Americans. And we think it's good policy. We think it's good politics. And we wish that it would be enacted more by the party.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. You're a brave man. We will have you on again. We've been talking to a champion of the resistance against corporate power and its stranglehold on our politics. If you're listening on the strongest FM west of the Mississippi, or hearing this as an audiobook rendered later on audible.com or in any kind of streaming thing, anything with a chip and a signal, it is our politics, not mine, not yours, not anybody's, but our politics. And we're lucky that people like Sam Rosenthal suit up, show up, and do a lot of that heavy lifting and research that's impossible for just one person to do. He's here to help. Political director of rootsaction.org, rootsaction, one word, .org, organizer, researcher based in Washington, D.C., who previously served as the political director at Our Revolution. I want to thank you so much for having come on today, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Carrie Harris with you. This is Rethinking Heroes. Coming up, welcome to the Democratic National Convention, where the party faithful have gathered to anoint Vice President Kamala Harris as their standard bearers. But amidst the pomp and circumstance, a disturbing trend has emerged, a lurch to the right on issues of policing and immigration. That may affect you. Yet, diversity and inclusivity are the beats of seduction. The phone lines are yours at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. That's 818-985-5735. Your turn to share your thoughts, your analyses, your hopes, your fears, the America you want to see amidst the looming Project 2025s, which I will get into in just a moment, and the fact that two Supreme Court clerks, two of them, helped author Project 2025. Uh-oh, I just heard your stomach knot up. Your thoughts, those are coming up.
Listen while it's still legal.
Rethinking Heroes with Carrie Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.
And it is Rethinking Heroes, RethinkingHeroes.com, where you can get your free newsletter. Just pausing for a second to give some love to KPFK. You heard from Sam Rosenthal. You've heard the nature of our discussion. how unfortunate the mainstream media is. And it's not that it's filled with complete gutter snipes, nitwicks, knuckle walkers, general people with IQs of 90. Not the case at all. There are many, many, many talented people who want to put themselves at risk and tell you great stories, but they can't. But they cannot under their corporate masters. And let me tell you, over decades, it erodes your spine, withers. You get down to like all your I was going to say, never mind. It was a beautiful metaphor, but I just can't say it on here. Let's just say things deed to mess, and you wither, and you just end up doing the general nothingness that's out there because it's sponsorable, and you're not going to get anyone in trouble with politics. And what is America now? Two things: business and politics. And you could talk about business all day you want, but you can't pull the curtain behind politics and think you're Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz or Toto pulling that curtain back and the wizard's going to hug and hold you and kiss you. No, you'll be shot. So how do we get these messages out? That's why we have KPFK. That's why I'm asking you right now to pick up the phone. Pick it up right now and call 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Option 1, phone calls if you want to go on the air. I want you to go on the air. Option 2 is to donate $100 right now. $100 turns into $1 million. Think about the return on investment. If you spend $100 to support this radio station, support voices of people who are out there working hard, taking personal risks to get out real information, to give both sides of the story, that becomes $1 million because 1 million people will hear your $100. Plus, this particular show gets rendered into an audiobook on Audible, along with every other possible way you listen to a podcast, including YouTube and Facebook and TikTok. This is banned in 5 states. That means you have tens of millions of people forbidden by law, state law, to hear Rethinking Heroes. You are making the delivery of that as an audiobook possible for a $100 donation. It is $1 million legacy that you are leaving to generations and generations, a time capsule of what it was like then. And maybe it'll be hell for them later, but maybe they can see what it looked like during the good days. I would hate to think so. That's why you and I are here picking up the phone right now, calling 818-985-5735, 818-985 KPFK, 818-985-5735, making that $100 donation, making a donation toward free speech radio, making a donation toward the strongest FM west of the Mississippi. Imagine if we had hundreds of millions of listeners on here because we could afford to let them know we were here doing this good work. Imagine the change in national politics. But we are doing our good work. We have networks in New York, we are in Los Angeles, we are in San Francisco, we are in Houston, and we are in the dreaded Washington, D.C. We have hot FMs, early FMs, some of the first licenses ever given in the most important parts of the United States, and this is heard there. That's why I'm asking you to pick up the phone and call 818-985-5735. Maybe you've never had children. Maybe you only have a reindeer chihuahua, which I had once upon a time, best dog that ever lived. Either way, this is your legacy. For a $100 donation, just know it keeps splitting in multipliers. The more ears it reaches, the more eyeballs it reaches through video, the more people you touch, the better it gets for you. Lack of education is always our downfall, and we have been idiotized systematically, routinely, and on purpose for decades and decades. We are reversing that right now with your pledges by picking up the phone and calling 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. And I'll say it one more time, $100 right now, reaching millions of people. Talk about touching hearts and minds. Oh my God. And we're doing it the way nobody else is doing it. And I sound like Donald Trump. Let me just say, Rethinking Heroes is one of a tiny fraction, live streaming using the most modern technology, reaching out on everything with a chip and a signal. This is your home run. This is your beating heart for the future. By supporting this show, you are sending out the signal and getting it to students. You know, I was in Switzerland over the summer teaching 10-year-olds basic broadcast and journalism technique so they could fact check, find the truth, hand the baton to them, and let them tell the truth as they are actually seeing it without a filter. That's powerful stuff. I am willing to volunteer my brains out. I just need to be a way to get there to do it. I don't see a penny of this money, but KPFK does. And with KPFK having my back, I can go out and do good things in your name. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. You can call it and get on the air. You can call it and make a donation. You can do both. And now, back to the show.
Listen while it's still legal.
Rethinking Heroes with Carrie Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.
Is Rethinking Heroes, RethinkingHeroes.com. Don't forget to go and sign up for our free newsletter where you'll get a copy of this program. You'll get access to archives to all the other ones going back. You can go to my YouTube channel. Just Google Carrie Harrison YouTube, Cary. Same thing on Facebook. Excuse me. You're going to be able to see everything, archive everything. And in the free newsletter, you're not only going to get that, you're going to get transcripts and also occasional stuff that I'm able to put out there that we cannot do on the radio. We still are FCC regulated. And I'm not talking about porn or anything like that. There's just certain things that, let's just say, don't fit for maybe a 10-year-old listening in the backseat of mom's car on the way to carpool. Maybe more complicated thinking. So that is what's in there when you sign up for our newsletter at RethinkingHeroes.com. As I said earlier, welcome to the Democratic National Convention, where the party faithful have gathered to anoint Vice President Kamala Harris as their standard bearer. It's your turn now to share your thoughts, your analyses, your hopes, your fears, the America you want to see. Amidst all the pomp and circumstance, a disturbing trend has emerged. And we'll get to you, Mark, in Long Beach, and everyone else in just a second at 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. This disturbing trend is alert to the right on issues of policing and immigration. But what of the activists who urge the Democratic Party to drop its carceral approach? Carceral meaning incarceration. What of the delegates who sought a more just and equitable platform? Well, it seems their voices have fallen on deaf ears as the party establishment has chosen to pander to the right-wing fear-mongering of Don Trump and his ilk. Speaking of Don Trump, that great pretender who claims ignorance about Project 2025, I mean, it's amazing watching him wound up in action. But to claim ignorance about Project 2025 when in fact it was his entire platform 2 months ago. Don't be fooled by him, please. This Project 2025 is a plan hatched by the Heritage Foundation. We were one of the first to do an entire show on that here on Rethinking Heroes months and months ago. We brought in Vanity Fair. We brought in a bunch of researchers who had just read that 900-page hideous instrument from hell, and we broke it down for you. Well, this was hatched by the same Heritage Foundation, and it aims, ready for this, to reinvent the federal government in the image of the current Republican Party. Not the Republican Party when I was a kid of George Bush Sr., Episcopalians. Half of them believed in recycling. They were generally friendly in the grocery store. Starving homeless people vomiting on the sidewalk, not a good idea. Level playing field, not that political party. This is the current MAGA Republican Party. And Trump claims to know nothing about it. He's an expert on everything else, every possible thing out there he is an expert on, except Project 2025. Claims to know nothing about it, even though it was on his website, even though he was selling it. We know better. We who grew up on television, on Bozo Circus, reality TV, all sarcasm aside, we know that 26 26 of the 36 authors of this nefarious plan worked on Don Trump's administration. Oh, it's a coincidence. That's right. 72% of them had direct connections to Trump's inner circle. Two of these contributors to Project 2025 clerked for Supreme Court Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. Dead air is appropriate here, just for a second. Two of the authors of Project 2025 clerked for Supreme Court Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. So what's the plan, you ask? Well, they want to fundamentally alter life in the U.S., controlling what we can read, what we can watch, even think. They'll define pornography, it's in writing, as any sex outside of marriage. Let me say that again. Pornography will become, under law, any sex outside of marriage, and divorce will be outlawed. Divorce will be outlawed. They'll dictate how we live, what we believe, and who we can love. And I'm not talking, I'm talking to you, Mr. Gay person, about no, who we all can love. Just like 80 years ago in the Third Reich, decided who we can love and who is unlovable, and those people will be removed. If you've ever seen The Handmaid's Tale, this is the real world, real life Gilead on the cooker right now. But Trump's just a pawn in their game, a useful idiot, as Vladimir Putin calls him. The real danger lies with those behind him, the ones who will stop at nothing to achieve their political fetish. Let's just call it what it is. It's a fetish. It's a ball gag. It is electrodes on the nipples. It is jumper cables on the nads. They're using him to pave the way for a new generation of authoritarian leaders, ones who are going to make Trump look like a saint. A saint. That's a high reach. Don't be fooled, please. Remember history, the one your grandparents lived. This isn't just about Trump. It's about the entire iteration of the modern Republican Party and their quest for power. They're going to use any means necessary to achieve their ends, and we must be vigilant. My founding father ancestors, dusty, withered sphincters, can be heard puckering beneath the soil right now as we speak. They're saying, resist, resist. For the sake of our democracy, our freedom, our very way of life, we have to say no to Project 2025 and all it represents, and anyone that would put that to our doorsteps. It is absolutely unconstitutional, absolutely against the way of life, absolutely against why we as Englishmen left England. As I've always said, the whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary. Time for us to once again use our critical thinking. All right, let's open up the phones because I want to hear your impressions of this week of Democratic conventions and everything surrounding the reality of today and beyond. No observation, no analysis is off the table, no subject too taboo. You can also catch this broadcast live streaming right now as video on YouTube. Simply Google Carrie Harrison YouTube. Let's go to Mark in Long Beach. You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hello. I've been watching all the DNC, and the messages are hammering around the way forward. And I've got a solution, I believe. When you go vote, you vote for the best candidate you can, and sometimes you have to hold your nose. But at the end, you'll see blank pages say intentionally left blank. Why not put boxes where you can state your opinions on each topic? Abortion, police violence, whatever, and then each person, they will have a list of exactly what that voter thinks, and they would be able to compile it And especially the person elected will know what they're expected to do, but overall, everybody will know what the American voters want.
Well, that's a great idea. And thank you, by the way, for your call, Mark, in Long Beach. That opens up a line at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. You know, the nation of Switzerland, a neutral country, actually has that, but people don't write in what they want. They have more of a parliamentary system, which is something we could have here too, which is where 2% of the government is this and 8% is that, and it fills itself in commensurate with the appetites of the people. And what it does is it allows a flow of ideas to go through the government, whether the government likes it or not. This is not about pleasing the government. This is about the voice of the people and their appetites and needs and wants and desires to be heard. And it also creates real stability because you've got so many parts that are balanced. Nobody can take it over and throw it hard to the left, hard to the right, just as we do here, this seesaw mechanism where everything falls apart. So you can dismantle government, take away services. That does not happen there. It's stability. And you have a giant fat middle class, which is not a disgusting thing like we're told it is here. Oh, it's just overweight people at Walmart. No. It is people that are clean and educated, speak multiple languages. They're cool. They can go on vacation. They know what's going on. You know, you don't have neighbors that are sitting around, you know, hammering in pebbles into their gums because they can't afford to have teeth. People aren't desperate and psychotic. It's called stability. Look at Australia. There's a prime example of how to live. They have the same kind of government. Let's go to Mike on line 3, wherever that might be located, somewhere in Los Angeles area. Mike, you're on Rethinking Heroes.
Howdy. And it seems clear that one of the two major party candidates is likely to be the next president. And one of them has accused the other of being a low IQ individual. Seems to me that's virtually tantamount to admitting that you are willing to have your own IQ tested by a neutral third party and have the result published. And I would just like to have some sort of a movement or petition started to point in that direction, offer both candidates the opportunity to take the IQ test and have their score published.
Oh, think of that, how beautiful that is, Mike. I mean, we do have an age limitation for president, which is still 45, isn't it? Or is it 35? I forget. You have to pass a certain age threshold in order to qualify as president. If you added in IQ, wouldn't that be interesting? Would it be fair? But if one is challenging the other, I see no problem with publishing those and letting the public appreciate and enjoy what that means. Of course, you're going to get MSNBC and Fox News explaining what a low and a high IQ is, and likely they will end up being inverted. But it's a beautiful solution. And for comedy's sake, I am 100% all for it. And I appreciate your call, my friend. That opens up a line at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Mark in Lomita, hang on for a second. You were at the protest in Chicago, and there have been many. There have been cops doing the old Chicago thing from 1968, minus the death, but not letting a lot of voices being heard, especially those who are trying to defend the people of Palestine. Mark, I'm guessing that's what you were there to see. I'm going to pause for just a second and give a little love to KPFK because it's time to ring the register and make things better. All right, let me just jump into that. I want you to pick up the phone right now and call 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. You can not only get on the phone, but you can throw $100 at KPFK. You can keep this legacy going. Keep it going so that people can get education, people can get access. Think about the beauty of a radio, which is different from a stream. Radios have no limits and no boundaries. They punch through windshields. They go everywhere. Every age group, every color, every denomination, everyone, even if you have no money whatsoever, try buying an iPhone. What is it? $1,400. So if you want to have a stream, you have to be able to afford a digital product to be able to pull in the stream, even to watch this show live streaming right now by Googling Carrie Harrison YouTube or going to our KPFK Facebook page. You have to have the equipment. You have to have some money outlaid, and you have to pay for internet, and you have to pay for this and electricity. Radio is free. Now, for you and me, we use it, but we use it as a tool, as an instrument, and we help keep it on so that other people who don't have the funds to buy these other pieces of equipment, they can get this unlimited, all you can eat. That's why I'm asking you to call 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, and make a $100 donation or $125 or $150, knowing that you are giving people who do not have the money to have smart devices to be able to watch and listen and go on Google and do whatever they want and stream this and stream that. But they've got this radio, which is amply and freely given to them. Plus, there's no bandwidth restriction. With radio, 50 million people could all be listening at the same time. In fact, 550 million, 1,550 million people could be listening to Rethinking Heroes all at the same time. No bandwidth diminishment. That's how powerful this station is. And that's what we can do by spreading the word, by supporting this signal. So pick up the phone, knowing that this show, Rethinking Heroes, renders into an audiobook on Audible. It becomes illegal in 5 states in the South. This is the only news people are going to get if they want audio versions, because it is customized. We just broke down what Project 2025 was. We had on Sam Rosenthal earlier of rootsaction.org. And those people in the South get to hear you in Los Angeles, the media capital of Earth. Your assessment, your take, as we heard from Mike, as we heard from Mark, as all the other people who are donating. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please pick up the phone right now and call 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Throw $100 at us, $150 at us. It is a legacy that will return on investment, turn into millions of dollars of impact dollars. So please do it. Do it for you. Do it for your children. Do it for your neighbors. Do it for people who simply cannot afford the very basics, but they can afford free radio, which will come in on any car, any instrument. Everything has a radio in it still. Thank God. All right. Boom. Let's go to Mark in Lomita. You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I do.
Good. I just got back from the Democratic National Convention. I was not inside. I was outside. On Saturday, we had a large, successful demonstration to defend a woman's right to choose of about 2,000 people, exposing the fact that both the Democratic and the Republican parties have failed to secure a woman's right to choose. Then there were a series of demonstrations, conferences, U.S. out of Asia, demonstration of about 7,500 on Monday, which had a multitude of demands. A number of us came from around the country. I'm from the Los Angeles Hands Off Cuba Committee, which is fighting to end the blockade of Cuba, to get Cuba off the Washington's list of suspected terrorist nations, to end the trade and travel ban. So we participated, a contingent of people from around the country, to garner support from the thousands of demonstrators there to help end the blockade, culminating in a meeting with Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Fuentes del Amor, Cuban-American leader Carlos Lasso, Puerto Rican activists, trade union activists. I think the demonstrations were smaller than expected, in part because people, a certain percentage of people who would have come, felt that with the nomination of Harris, things would be better. That just because you have a woman there or a black person there, that it's going to make the politics of the Democratic Party any different. But she has clearly said that she will carry out Biden's foreign policy, supporting Israeli genocide, and they just voted $20 billion more. So what else can be said?
Well, I appreciate your check-in on that. And just one final question. What about the police presence there? I hear that the police were acting as a successful buffer between you, the protesters, and the conventioneers.
Yes, I would say I have never seen such a massive police presence, a solid line of cops on bicycles on both sides of the demonstrators as we marched a certain march route. And then there were some confrontations, questionable who instigates them, but there's always agent provocateurs at these demonstrations, or some anarchists or adventurers who think that scaling a fence is going to get you anywhere, or carrying out some crazy action in front of the Israeli embassy. And what happens is, of course, the media picks up on these very insignificant disruptions and covers that, and not the big marches. There were at least 200 media there from around the world, and they were very interested in interviewing the protesters and our perspectives on the fight against police brutality, or ending the blockade of Cuba, or Israeli genocide, with a special focus, I would say, on ending U.S. military aid to Israel. That is the most important thing that we can do. And I have that position. That is not the position of the LA Hands Off Cuba Committee, which just focuses on Cuba. But I and many others believe that that's the impact that we can have to stop the U.S. military aid to Israel.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you very much. That was Mark and Lomita. Notice the quality of people that call. These are your fellow listeners. These are not mumbling, drooling, this is not that. This is like high functioning audience. I want you to remember that as you pick up the phone and make a donation to KPFK at 818-985-5735. Carrie Harrison with you. Well, thank you so much, my friend. Carrie Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com, where you can get a free copy, not only of this program and a transcript and other stuff that we get that we cannot put on the radio, but also you'll be able to have access to all the archives to the shows going back to the beginning of time. Plus, you can go to my YouTube channel, Carrie Harrison YouTube. Just Google it. It'll come up, and you'll be able to see most of the shows on there as well. As you know, I am in the last minute here putting together a radio network. We'll call it a little network based on the work I did over the summer of teaching 10-year-olds, 10 to 14-year-olds, basic broadcasting, basic journalism, fact-checking, and handing the baton over. Over the summer, I had a Ukrainian next to a Russian, next to a Japanese, next to this, next to that, one person from every country. And they're all going to be little reporters, and we're going to build a brand new show, and we're going to put it on at the network level. If you want to hear truth like you've never heard it before, that's my personal mission. And I'm doing it for you and your children and the future, and for all of us, because I could be around here forever, as much as I'd love to be. Carrie Harrison here. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Don't forget to pick up the phone. Call 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Please make a donation. Make this signal strong again. It's already strong. It's like 212,000 watts, strongest signal west of the Mississippi. But let's take it through millions of new ears and help me get this on chips and signals and streaming and video so that it hits people under 30, because they are the next generation, and they're the only ones who are going to save our communal ass, I'm afraid to say. Thank you, Renee Yawarski, our wonderful, beautiful technical director. Thank you, Gary Baca at KPFK. And thank you, the listener, me, the listener too. Thank you all, and I look very much forward to seeing you all next week.
Rethinking Heroes with Carrie Harrison. rethinkingheroes.com.